Hi friends, I'm Liz.
I'm Robby. Welcome back to our channel Bookworm Couple. Today we are going to be talking about the second book in the Crescent City series, A House of Sky and Breath. I think that this book wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. I was hoping that from the first one, there were some growing pains. It's a very different type of book than ones I had read from her before. But I feel like this book has a lot of the same problems as the first one, and unfortunately does not have just a absolutely rock solid ending like the first one did. The ending of the first book is phenomenal, and the ending of this book there's some cool things that happen, but I think kind of par for the course for other Sarah J. Maas books. Not something I would consider to be in her top 3, top 5 best endings. And so I was hoping for at least that payoff. I didn't super get it. I will say there is something that happens at the end of this book that I know made the entire world kind of freak out. I knew it was going to happen.
That I accidentally spoiled to you because it was such a moment that I accidentally spoiled it to him. Not accidentally.
It wasn't accidentally.
I purposefully was like, I need to talk to someone about this right now. Do you care if I spoil this ending?
And this was years before this was right when the book came out.
I didn't actually think he'd ever read this book.
So I'm not. So I might have felt differently if I hadn't known this thing. However,
I lost my mind. My heart stopped.
I gotta be honest. I don't think even if I hadn't known it, that it would have changed my opinion of the book that much. It probably would have been a really cool moment, but overall I don't think it would have had much of an effect on my opinion of the book as a whole.
I think that makes sense. I think it's very own special little moment.
I so not to go into spoilers yet, but my problems from the first one still kind of remain. I think this book could have been much shorter. I think that strangely, I think the writing in this one is weaker than the first one. And honestly, one of the weakest things I've read from her since early Throne of Glass.
Sure.
I think that she way over explains a lot of stuff that not like plot, like not world building or plot wise, but like what characters are thinking or feeling. She seems to go way over the top with some explanations. There seems to be like contradictions within some of the things that she's writing about the world. And sometimes it feels like it's on purpose because it's supposed to be part of the mystery. And then sometimes it feels just messy.
Do we think part of that could be, this is just me theorizing right now, that could be because when she was writing this book, she was already a really big author. So maybe she thinks because she's writing for a larger audience that she's kind of adjusting how she writes.
Maybe. I don't know. That's not something that I even
I just
considered.
thought that right now when you said that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I haven't really thought about it that way.
And because it's a new type of book for her too, that there's like a learning curve and maybe being like, well, maybe they need more of this. That's just I don't know.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not really sure. I remember I spoke about certain aspects of the writing in our last video, and I'll assume you've at least read the first book if you're watching this one, so this isn't much of a spoiler, but I thought that some of the writing and some of the way the characters were written to speak with an overabundance, I would say, of like profanity, trying to sound like a third grader, sounding like an adult being cool, I thought was a bit jarring. In this book, I mean, I didn't really notice that. I don't know if it was still a thing. I may just be used to it, but just the general writing felt... I don't want to be mean, but it felt juvenile in certain areas. It just felt not great. And also is not helped by the fact that and I'll talk more about this in the spoiler section, I do not like Bryce and Hunt's relationship. To say something that's for a younger person than me to say, it gives me the ick. And there's like certain things that happen with them that I'm just like, I am just really not on board very much. I don't mind either of the characters on their own. Them together and the way that they interact, I think, is super weird and cringy. And just, I know it's not written for me, but yeah, just not a fan. And, I don't want to get too much more in. So any other general things you want to say before we jump into spoilers?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So spoilers going forward, if you haven't read the second book in Crescent City, pause, come back. We'll be here when you're done. I will say I liked the beginning of this book, if not the plot line that was connected to it, because it felt like the opening of it felt like the cold open of like the third episode of every spy series I've ever watched.
Wait, huh?
Yeah, which was cool. It's like
Someone we
new
don't know?
character,
Mystery.
someone we don't know doing like some clandestine activity in a prison camp. It was like, I thought that whole thing was really cool. Mm-hmm. I didn't really care about Sophie Renast or Emile for like the rest of the book.
Yeah,
and
I kind of felt
I didn't really. I don't think that plot line had enough payoff. And in fact, like about halfway through the book, or like a quarter of the way through the book, when it was like really becoming Bryce's mission to find this kid, not only did I not care, I actively started getting annoyed because I thought her reasons for wanting to find the kid weren't really justified. Mm-hmm. Or if they were, it made the character like extremely selfish. Bryce. Because it's just like, it's super clear that Hunt is wildly uncomfortable, and she's supposed to be like all-encompassing caring about him, and was tortured for what, like centuries, because of even considering what she's trying to do. And then she's just kind of explaining it away of like, well, it's a kid. And I'm like, yeah, but also then your family, who you're also supposed, like the character, one of her core values is caring about her family and them being safe, and they will 100% be tortured and murdered if she even goes anywhere near this kid. And then the other one is Danica, and I'm sorry, Danica, and literally some of the characters in the book say it, Danica is dead. I can't curse. Who cares what Danica thinks or what secrets she had? Like the world building secrets that are revealed at the end, very cool. But who cares what secrets Danica kept from Bryce? None of that's going to change anything. And it really annoyed me that was like because the bottom line is Bryce says a lot of things, and the author doesn't really like make it super clear which one of them is actually like the real driving force. To me, I think it's supposed to be the Danica thing, and to me that's just annoying. She's been dead for a while. Not everything has to link back to Danica. And I also didn't really like that, what's his name, the Hellhound, is Danica's mate. One, because I think it's more interesting if that character just kind of came into his own, to like realize the error of his ways, instead of being like, I fell in love with this person because I was biologically required to, essentially, and then that made me be like, well, I guess I should stop being such a terrible person. Not really that compelling to me. And it's also just annoying to me that once again it has to go back to this character that died in the first 200 pages of the first book that seems to need to be a part of every undercurrent of half the plot lines that are still being done. Yeah. Sorry, apparently I feel very passionate about that. Yeah. But I don't know. Am I way off base? Do you not care about any of that?
No, I think that's kind of part of the purpose of Bryce as a character, is to show the imperfections and also to show the obsession with a relationship and someone's like approval, and also kind of the rehashing of who you thought you were, what you thought you knew. I don't think that's an easy thing to do. So sure. I understand the obsession of consistently going back to her driving force being her relationship with Danica, and Danica not telling her things. Because in that moment, mind you, only a few months have passed, a few years since Danica died, but still, there's been not a lot. I mean, we see in Bryce's life, she hasn't healed at all. Until this first book is when she actually starts. Yeah. And so whilst I do agree with you, it does get frustrating, I also find Danica really interesting as a character, even if we don't actually get to see her. So I find myself being intrigued by the moments from her in the past. So I understand the annoyance of it, but I understand the human drive behind it, like the idea behind it. Because I think similarly to our conversations we've had about Nesta, having that kind of more real life scenario of, healing emotions, etc. is not perfect. No, I don't disagree. I also think it's something that I pushed past a lot. And I guess we'll probably talk about this in the future, because there's a little bit, I can't like say anything without getting anything away. I do agree with you of like Bryce and Hunt, first of all, I'm not a big Hunt fan. I'm so sorry. I love Bryce. I don't dislike them together, but I just don't really love Hunt. as a character. I know a lot of people do. So no, props, like, that's great. Love who you love. But I found myself on Bryce's side very often with her being like, just get over it, which I know sucks and but my kind of character.
Just get over what?
Of him being like scared of being in a rebellion. Whereas like I understand that, and I don't think she handles it very sensitively or preciously, but I do understand. It was kind of more my second time reading through it that I was like, oh, this is pretty tough.
Yeah, no, I disagree. I'm on everyone else's side on most of this. Basically,
fair.
Everyone else in the book is telling Bryce, you should stay away from this kid. And I'm on all of their sides because I think you're totally right. I think it is a major part of her character that she like can't let go of this Danica thing. Hopefully there's an emotional payoff there and it's not just part of... I don't know. But I do think she's... And you know, humans are walking contradictions, so it makes sense, but it is kind of annoying to read a character who feels so self-righteous in her love for all of her friends and self-righteous in that like she would give anything for all of them and then actively pursues things that puts all of them in terrible, terrible danger.
For sure.
Against all of their advice. Yeah. I know, but it's also obscenely selfish. Sure. And self-centered, but especially because the information is literally just to make her feel good about someone. Like, that's not actually going to change anything. Anyway,
I don't know, kind of
back to
the book.
The beginning of the book. I will say, one of my first notes is that I was like, oh, Bryce changed jobs? That's lame. I wanted to know more about Jezebel. And I was super bummed that Jezebel barely in this book. And I am super bummed that she was not... And like, especially because the tag of the first book was like, okay, here's kind of what we're looking for with Adis, and Jezebel talking. And I'm like, great, awesome, there's going to be more of both of them in this book. And there was, but like barely. That made me very sad. But we did get more with the Princes of the Hells, Apollyon maybe?
Believe so.
Yes, I believe so. I thought all of that stuff, I'm 100% in. It was very confusing, and I'm not sure if that was by design, but I was kind of okay with it either way. Of like, they have the meeting with Apollyon or Idis, one of the Princes of the Hells, and first Idis tells them that, like, you know, we are your armies to push back the Asteri. And then Apollyon's like, I want to fight you and kill you. And I was like, mixed messages.
Right.
Whoa. And part of that, I think it was supposed to be confusing on purpose. And like part of the book is them trying to figure out, like, wait, what is happening? Are we supposed
on your team
like
or
they're
what?
and I did think it was funny and well done if this was on purpose that like both the rebels and the Hells, armies of the Hells, all hate the Asteri, but they also all entirely suck. Like, there are no good options.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fine because I don't know that you're really supposed to be rooting for any of these people.
Yeah, they all kind of suck.
They all do kind of suck, though, which I thought was just kind of amusing. But I'm very into the lore of what's going on there and very into the whole Asteri plotline of, like, the history that they are peddling to people, not necessarily... meaning definitely not the real history. Not super surprising, but still very interesting to learn more about them, where they might have come from, and I guess to jump all the way to the end in one of the big, like, world-building reveals of the fact that they're just like an alien race. They do not control stars, and they just suck up people's first light. Yeah, they're parasites. Mm-hmm. And while not like super surprising, I think that was foreshadowed heavily enough that it wasn't. I wasn't like like as soon as the I mean, from the beginning, there was clearly something about the Asteri. In the first book, I was like, okay, so there's something happening.
I don't know that I would have guessed. Yeah, but you're like, okay, that's what it is.
Yes, but by the time that we got the thing about Second Light, and essentially, for lack of a better term, realizing that everyone's essence, life force returns to the wheel and is recycled. I was like, okay, so the Asteri are probably sucking all this. Yeah, I was like, okay, great, cool.
I'm on it.
So still a cool moment though. Still very cool for like world building implications. So I really did like all of that plot line. I wish that there was more of it. I wish that there was more of like the Princess of the Hells. I'm very interested in everything that's going on there, and like the reveal that Hell is not a place, or Hell is not like a different plane of existence. It's a different
Straight
planet.
up planet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think
Hell
I
with
think
one
all
L.
of that and how that all is kind of interconnected. It did remind me a bit of some Brandon Sanderson Cosmere stuff. I was like, cool, great, fun. I kind of understand this. So I'm into all of that, which is the same stuff that I was into from the last book. So, you know, teasing bits and more bits and pieces of information about like the truth of the world, I'm always going to be very, very interested in. I'm a sucker for like, whoa, what do you mean these deities are weird? What's the deal?
Where'd they come from?
Yeah, anything about that.
You're not questioning your history?
Yeah, anything like that, I will always enjoy, even if I can like be like, oh, I think this is probably what this is, and guess what it's going to be. I still always find it really interesting to read world building and lore stuff like that. The other, honestly, like my other favorite part of this book, and I think the other big standout part is the boys, man. The supporting male cast is
the frat boys?
Yes, they truly like kind of saved the book for me.
We love.
And that's saying a lot because I don't like Ethan. When he came in, one of my first notes from reading this is, oh god, are we trying to make Ethan a thing? I just don't care about him. I don't like him, and I don't want to read about him. And even though we got to a point where he's like, yeah, I had a crush on Bryce, I was like, oh my god, I just don't care. I still liked his plotline, which is incredible because I really didn't want to. And I mostly liked it because of Rune and what are his boys' names? Declan, love Declan, and Flynn. And them just like living in a frat house. And then Tharian, whose plotline I also didn't super care about, but I did like that he joined the boys.
Our redheaded mermaid.
Yeah, I was just like, his whole plotline felt kind of pointless.
It's my least favorite.
Except for like nothing about it made me be like, oh, don't this again. I just truly didn't care. And I was just like, I mean,
that's great because otherwise it could be really exhausting.
It didn't actively annoy me. I was just like, why is this here? And it seems like it was really just there to have an excuse for those massive city ships to show up.
Sure.
Which was super cool, but everything else about it, I was just like, okay. Yeah. I like definitely didn't need him to be a POV character.
I think that's how a lot of people feel.
Like
a lot of people really dislike that character.
Oh, okay. I mean, he is kind of a dick.
Yeah.
But also
I don't
he's
really
like,
have a feeling about him. I find his plot in this a little bit exhausting, but like, yeah, okay, I agree with you. I'm like, oh, I love that they're just like, come on in, the water's fine.
Yeah, I very much like the boys.
Yeah.
Everything about like them hanging out and Ethan like having friends outside of his wolf pack, I was just like, yeah, I'm super into it. The astronomer bit with Ethan, that bit of his plotline, I was like, oh, this is giving off like Minority Report vibes, and I don't know. I mean, the reveal that one of the whatever they're called,
not prophets,
the people in the water,
what do you call them?
Yeah, I don't remember. Muses. The seers or something, whatever.
Yeah.
Is a wolf and is a Fendir heir. What's cool? There is no character in this book who thinks Sabine is good, and like no character in any position of power, it seems like, anywhere in the city that thinks Sabine is good or wants her to be in a position of power. And I understand that, like, it's good. You know, sometimes it's nice to have villains that are just villains.
Yeah.
But it's also, it seems like everyone hates her so much. It seems
You're
like unrealistic that she is in the position that she is in. So it makes that plotline really interesting to me because I'm like, okay, Sabine's just going to be awful again. But also, Sabine, it seems like, and I think it's because many of our main characters are extremely powerful, but Sabine comes in and is like awful to people or beats Ethan half to death, and then will show up in a scene with other people, and half of our main POV characters could kill her without really trying. So she is entirely impotent, which makes her as a character, it's like, you're not that strong, no one likes you, no one wants you to be in a position of power. So it doesn't make sense to, either all of the wolves are really, really weak, or this whole thing just doesn't make sense to me. Because it feels like someone should have just deposed her at this point. She's like, even the actual alpha, old man, who once again goes, wolf, is, like, clearly doesn't like her. And she's his daughter, I think? Because he hasn't passed down power to her, even though he's like a senile old wolf who can't do anything. So it feels really weird to read about her every time because I'm just like, this doesn't actually, like, the internal logic doesn't flow for me. And it makes every time she comes in, I'm like, great, she's going to say something just like the most awful thing I can possibly think of. She will say that. And then she'll snarl at them. And then one of the like half a dozen characters that could immediately kill her will just glare at her and she'll go, and then she'll walk away with like a parting shot. And for some reason, no one's going to rip her head off. That like I've literally not had explained.
Well, but I think for like, it's almost, it's like a political power reason. Like if you do that, you start a war. It's
I guess.
Act of war.
I guess. I don't know. I just think I understand like the
but she
function
has
that she serves.
loyalists.
She has like one loyalist
within her pack, within the wolves.
She has like one loyalist that
we hear of. But she obviously has people behind her.
That's the thing, I think, is that who are they? We don't know. We've never heard about literally any of them. We heard of one, and she's also just like a tiny Sabine clone being very mean.
Sure.
Otherwise, there's like we don't. Okay. Anyway. Ethan, still not my favorite character. Super didn't care that he had a crush on Bryce. Thought it was hilarious that at some point, I think it was Therion who went like, yeah, well, everyone's had a crush on Bryce at some point. And I was like, okay. Like, great. Anyway. Oh, yeah, the entire plotline with Celestina. And, also the best plotline in this entire book was Night and Day. By the way.
Yeah.
100%.
This is when we all fell in love
really
with
good. Rune. I liked him in this book. In the last book, he made zero impression on me. I think I took exactly 0 notes that mentioned his name in the first book. I was just like, Rune exists. Cool. Liked him.
He exists for us to have fantasies about
sure,
him.
Great. I liked him more in this book. He had a lot more to do.
Yeah, he
also,
really
it helped a lot that, like,
you get
him and the boy, getting his head a lot more. Him and the boys is, I do think, like one of the stronger parts of the book. And him with Night is, or him with Day, excuse me, is, I mean, it's definitely the best romance part of the book. Bryce and Hunt, it's a mess. I will say, though, I honestly give Sarah J. Maas a little bit of respect for writing something as stupid as being like, let's just have our 2 main characters decide to be celibate in a romance book for legitimately no reason. And then break that about a third of the way through so that we can have the sex scenes. I was just like, this is so dumb, I'm not even mad. I just, okay, sure, good, keep the slow burn going, man. And then when that runs out, we can do the slow burn of Night and Day. And I liked that one better. And props to Sarah J. Maas for the massive red herring of Celestina when it's the Hind. I was like, man, I wonder if it's Hypaxia or Celestina again. But they're having sex with each other.
We love
that
it.
was fun. I
get
liked
caught
that.
in the coat closet.
Exactly, caught in the coat closet. I did like that. And there was a masquerade. I was like, oh, how sexy.
Yeah,
gotta have a masquerade.
Sneak away with your girl.
But I did. I really loved that whole plot line. I liked the way that Sarah J. Maas like put a very obvious red herring and then pulled the rug out from under you.
I love those visuals too of like just a being made of like sun, fire, and it being made of light. It's, as a very visual reader, I had a lot of fun with those scenes and like the chaise lounge just like in his head, and it's very good. I think you care about Day, me personally at least, like you care about her so fast, because I do also think Rune cares about her so fast without having like a face, but like because you get her intimate moments of her like essentially flinching, you know, in the moments when her partner, whatever you want to call them, you know, is approaching her. And I think the emotions, stripping away everything else and just having this happen with 2 like images in the head is a really interesting emotional device, and it made me care about them so much. Yeah.
Well, another thing I didn't like super love, I like Juniper and Fury as characters. I don't like how little they're in the book. It's weird to me, I guess. Or I don't know if it's weird to me. It's just like I really noticed, especially in this book, because Rune and Declan and Flynn and Ethan and Therion get so much face time, and there's so much like development, and we spend so much time with them. It's so strange to me that like Bryce is, I don't know, there's really no women consistently on the page other than Bryce. Which I just thought was kind of odd.
It's something I didn't even think about until you brought it up.
Well, because I like Fury and Juniper, and I want them to have more to do. And I liked Juniper's plot line about, you know, them not promoting her to principal.
Yeah.
Principal. And then Bryce, of course, calling the producers and it being a whole mess. And I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen, but I still like this plot line. I don't know what's going on with Fury. Fury is still mysterious, and that's the point. But neither of them are in it enough. And I don't know, it's just kind of strange to me. And yeah, I just wish that they were in it more, and it makes me sad that they are not. And it also just made me remember that there's the whole plot line with Cormac that I didn't really care too much about, except for the fact that everyone kept treating him like a dick. Even in the end of the book, when it had been established for a very long time that he's not. And I was just like, why is everyone being so mean to him? Like, in the beginning, it makes total sense. But by the end of the book, I was like, no one can open their mouths without, like, insulting him. And why? Like, why? Yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. I didn't really care about the Sophie Reynolds plot line. And so, you know, it was kind of... fell a bit flat for me.
It was like a...
I thought the character was fine. It's not a good sign for a plot line when my main thing I want to say about it is, why did all the other characters react to this character this way? That doesn't make sense. If that's the most important thing I have to say about it, probably means I wasn't that engaged by the plot line itself. Yeah, I mean, Bryce and Hunt, I mean, I touched on this before. I don't know that I cared about either of their individual plot lines too much in this. I enjoyed most of the, like, supporting plot lines, like I said, a little bit more. Bryce's plot lines and her motivations, I just think, felt kind of weak. And their relationship with... And Hunt... I mean, Hunt's made sense to me. I don't know. It wasn't that... It's the same thing as most... Like, he's the same thing as... oh my gosh, what's the guy's name from Rowan? I'm just like, he was there, and he did some cool stuff. And the character doesn't bother me, but it's not my favorite one either. And great. And that's kind of how I felt about him. Them together, I do not really like. It's very odd, like her not being able to decide how much she likes the possessiveness of him sometimes. And they're like the convoluted fights that they would get in, the way that she clearly doesn't really actually care that he is freaking terrified, traumatized. Yeah. It's just their entire relationship, and also the entire idea of the fact that they like don't want to be intimate with each other, and then the entire idea that, and this is one of the writing things, the amount of time that she spent, like, of course, foreshadowing that remains totally cool, but then literally having multiple characters like write it out and say like, you're mates. It felt like it didn't respect the reader's intelligence, I guess. But anyway.
See, and then I read Wheel of Time, and I'm like, I need you to spell some things out for me because I'm lost.
Sure. And there's no satisfying everyone because that's all subjective, exactly. And all of these videos are subjective. But these are just how I feel. Yeah. I guess lastly, we should talk about the very end and the implications that has for the wider Sarah J. Maas world. So seriously, if you haven't read the book and you ever want to,
don't listen.
Just really stop now, because I think this would be much cooler to just discover in the book.
Correct, because anyway, I think my heart stopped. I truly think my heart stopped in this moment.
So them showing up in Akatar land, and it makes sense with like the Fae from there came from, the Fae in Crescent City originally came from Akatar. I'm literally forgetting the name of the world. Prithian, thank you.
Or Prithian, I'm really not sure.
I mean, I thought that was cool. I'm interested. I hope that there is a big payoff. I hope that it's not just like a little cameo and that it's like a significant part of the next book. I really do. Yeah, I just hope that there's a good payoff. I want if they're going to do a crossover, I hope it's big. I hope that I would think it's really fun if a lot of the next Crescent City book is spent in Prithian, or if those characters come back. So... yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's not too much to say. I mean, it's really cool. I probably would have been a little bit more excited if I hadn't known it was coming, but I did. But I am really excited to see what she does with this, because that's, I mean, revealing that it's a big interconnected world, is cool enough. But then what do you do with that? So
no spoilers in the comments.
Yeah, no spoilers in the comments, please. I don't know. I'll be reading the third one soon, so I'll be all caught up. But
please,
I am interested to see where it goes. I confess I'm a little bit less, even with that cool ending. I'm a little bit less excited than I was after the first one. One, because the ending of the first one is just unbelievable. And two, because I don't think that she particularly showed that, the quality increased, and that this book just wasn't like a step up from the last one. And so I don't have the highest expectations for the next one. I hope I'm wrong, but I do know it's that long, and one of my biggest issues with both of the first two books is that I think they are both incredibly overlong, like easily 100, probably 200 pages overlong. So each. So we'll see.
What do you want to rate this one out of?
I don't know, Thunderbirds.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I mean, I don't know what I'm going to make for that,
Thunderbird.
but...
It can just be a symbol.
Thunderbirds, yeah. So how many
5.
Thunderbirds out of 5? I would give this a 3 out of 5 Thunderbirds. Yeah. I think that there are parts of the book that I enjoyed. There are parts of the book that I didn't. I think it kind of evens out. For the most part, the book... I mean, I moved through it quick. I found it to be relatively entertaining. I think for the most part, the book is just fine. I don't, actively dislike it, though there are parts of it that I think are disappointing and that I wished would have been better. But, that's going to be a 3 out of 5 Thunderbirds for me. What about you?
I gave it a 4.
Yeah.
I have very rose-colored glasses on with these books, so...
Well, no, you don't
I like Bryce a lot.
Yeah. I wish I liked her more.
That's good.
Yeah. I don't know. I really don't know how I'm going to feel about this series going forward. Because it feels very, middle of the road for me so far, which... ACOTAR swings pretty hard in either direction. Throne of Glass, honestly, might be my favorite series of Sarah J. Maas's so far, just with consistency. But also, that's closer to my personal taste than any of the other ones.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense. But anyway, those are our thoughts on House of Sky and Breath. What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below if we missed some of your favorite parts or your least favorite parts. But please, no spoilers in the comments. I have not read the third one yet. I forget the name of it, but I would love to not be spoiled before I get caught up with everything. House of Flame and Shadow. Oh, that's cool. I know what that one is.
Yeah.
Please like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and...
we'll see you on our next adventure.